Welcome to the Brindabella Ranges, about 30 kilometres by road from Canberra, and to the inaugural JPS Australian National Rallysprint Championship, an event where 6 of Australia's top race drivers team with 6 top rally drivers, all driving identical Nissan Bluebird TRX sedans in an attack on a 1.7 kilometre dirt hill climb. Among those drivers are 5 who've won the Australian Rally Championship, 2 who've won the Touring Car Championship, 4 who've won the James Hardie 1000, 1 sports sedan champion, 1 Australian champion driver, the Gold Star winner, and the 2 who were the first to set 100-mile-an-hour laps at Bathurst in a single-seater and in a sedan. They're chasing $14,000 prize money. Let's have a look at the course now with John Smailes.
Drivers have 2 runs at the course, one up and one roller coaster ride down. Rising some 80 metres over 1.7 kilometres, it's just like the special stage of a championship rally. The surface is soft over a hard-packed base, and that's difficult for the Nissans, which don't have a limited slip differential. First and second gear only is used on the way up. This hairpin is second gear in and first gear on the way out. The tighter S's have drops away on the apexes, waiting to catch an unwary wheel. On the way up, drivers use second from now on. Coming down, the brave ones will snatch third, really pushing the brakes into the tight corners. The winner is decided on the aggregate of both runs.
The first driver to attack the hill in the Rallysprint Championship event, driving the standard Nissan Bluebird TRXs, is George Fury, rally driver turned race driver, sharing the drive with Peter Clark. He's away at 120 horsepower only. This twice former Australian rally champion shared the title with Ross Dunkerton in 77, won it on his own in 80, won 2 endurance races last year in the Bluebird Turbo, has twice won the Southern Cross Rally. Should be very much at home, getting back onto the dirt that he knows so well. Sheep farmer from Tal Malmo. Look, tidy, nice, right on the apexes. Gets the car sideways. First came to notice, I first noticed him when he was driving and there he hasn't got enough power to get the thing really sideways. When in a Datsun 1600 he headed Andrew Cowan in the opening days of a Southern Cross Rally back in about 1975. Tremendously fast then as a privateer, taken into the factory team, and now, firstly as a rally driver, now as a race driver, always with Nissan, has got one of the plum drives in Australian motorsport. Not with a lot of power to play with, and therefore realising how necessary it is to be tidy, really bogging down out of that corner, and we'll be cursing things. All drivers in this sharing one of 4 cars, and Fury a 35.34, an average of 64.1 kilometres an hour.
Colin Bond is the only driver ever to have won both an Australian Rally Championship and an Australian Touring Car Championship. Something of an identity crisis for him today, although organisers have entered him as a racing driver, teamed with Ian Hill. Slowly away for Bond. Takes second, and that's where he'll stay for the majority of the run up the hill. Probably impossible in these cars to pull third gear up this 1.7 kilometre climb. Bond so sideways around the hairpin, the first of the hairpins, and really using the body English of the motor car to keep it sweeping and flowing. Bond first entered a rally in 1964, the Ampol Round Australia trial. He won the rookie title in that event as he bogs down out of the hairpin. He tries to keep the car as straight as possible. Won the Southern Cross Rally in 1971. Won the James Hardie 1000 predecessor, the Hardie Ferrado 500, in 1969. Much, much better out of that corner than George Fury. And again there, still bogging down, but a little faster, I'd suggest, than Fury. Coming up now to the finish line, Colin Bond, 42 from Gladesville in New South Wales. A time of 1 minute 34.16. Takes Fury's lead away by 1.2 seconds.
Ready for his rerun is Kiwi Jim Richards, 35 years old, sharing with Ed Mulligan. The stopwatch didn't start on his first run, in which we timed him at only a tenth of a second slower than the fastest so far, Colin Bond. JPS BMW team driver for the past 2 years, but many years ago, as he goes wide, slaps the bank there, which he certainly didn't do on his first run. He'd have been very happy, I think, to sit on his first time, but on the other hand, a second attack at the hill should improve things. But Richards won the New Zealand production car championship back in 72, 73, and one of their premier events, the Benson and Hedges 500. Later, the Sports Sedan Series in 1975 and 76. Watch him at the critical hairpin as he goes wide, stays out, doesn't let it bog down and gets out fairly smartly. Then in Australia, while campaigning a sports sedan, his great talent appreciated by the Holden dealer team, who took him in as co-driver with Peter Brock. He's sharing 3 victories there, 78 through to 1980 with Brock. He's raced go-karts, he's rallied. He rallied in a rally sprint only a few years ago in a BDA Escort, timed at 167 kilometres an hour along the straight on a circuit obviously very different to this one. Did his last rally only about 4 years ago. So a very versatile driver and a great sorter of cars. One of the quiet men of Australian motor racing, much liked and very highly regarded by his fellow competitors. Comes out with a 33.05, so despite going wide at the start, takes fastest time so far among the championship cars and the racing drivers, an average speed of 65.9 kilometres an hour. Having what amounts to a practice run can be handy, but it can also make you overconfident. Have a look at Richards. Bang. But still has so far done best time.
The last time twice Australian touring car champion Dick Johnson placed a lap dash like this was in the James Hardy 1000 qualifying last year, when he wrote off his Ford Falcon as he came onto Conrod Straight. This time he's in a borrowed car. Quick change to second gear from Johnson, didn't hang about with first. Not necessarily a clean change either. Johnson used to about 4 times as much horsepower as this with the Ford Falcon. Really working the wheel, isn't he? Just look at him trying to keep attitude off the car, and look at the axle tramp from the inside wheel of the Nissan. He tucks in tight through the hairpin. Trying to make the... Oh, and listen again to his gear changes, flat changes, of course. And he's trying to make as many straights as he can out of this twisty course to get the power down as neatly as he possibly can. And there's a lot to be said for the technique of the racing driver on a course like this where they've had time to practice. The rally driver tends to throw his car around a bit to give himself some options on the way out of a corner, whereas the racing driver knows where his limits lie on the way out of the corner, and therefore can commit his car more on the way in. And that's what Johnson's doing at the moment. This is the first of the legitimate racing drivers, as distinct from rally drivers turned racing drivers across the line. 1 minute 35.21 seconds for Dick Johnson, puts him in 3rd position. Sharing with twice Australian rally champion Geoff Portman is the wild man of the Australian Touring Car Championships, Allan Grice. And he bogs it down at the line. A terrible start from Allan Grice. He would have broken the lights on that. So right from the start, he's behind the 8 ball. He's really going to have to pull something out on the way up the hill. Grice is a twice Australian champion as well. He won the Australian Sports Sedan Championship in 1978 and 1979. He's the fire-breathing Chev Corvair, and he's adopted a fairly neat and tight rally style there. Putting his power well to the ground, letting it drift out there, up to the hairpin, which is all critical. Not a good entrance. But by going wide, gets his power to the ground moderately early, which could well be the undiscovered line by the other drivers to date. Grice, of course, is the man who established the 100-mile, or broke the 100-mile-per-hour lap barrier for touring cars in the James Hardy 1000 3 years ago. The Holden Commodore. Hard on brakes. Quick flick to first, up to second, and across the finish line in a time of 1 minute 37.17, the slowest time to date.
This has to be one of the hot team combinations. Kevin Bartlett, the race driver, 5 times Australian rally champion Ross Dunkerton, the rally driver, and Bartlett away. He's done a bit of rally. Not as much, for instance, among the racing drivers as George Fury or Colin Bond, but he's tried fairly hard. He got upside down in one rally, breaking his co-driver's wrist. He's done about 3 or so events. He's dabbled also with off-road motorcycle racing. So Kevin, who's been racing for 26 years in Australia, and most of it very quickly because he is a great natural talent. Things like Morris Minor convertibles, featured in his early days, and he's driven most things, including a lot of single-seaters. He's won the Macau Grand Prix. He's been a qualifier at the Indianapolis 500. Brilliant even in his recent years at Bathurst. A wonderful qualifying lap there in the wet in the big Chevrolet Camaro. The survivor, of course, of 2 serious accidents. Have left him with some artificial parts in his hip. A man who's had his really down times too, because he's often been running cars on a very limited budget, having to run parts that were very old, and that was the problem that caused his accident at Sandown when the Brabham skidded off the circuit when a wheel broke. It's run in rallies in the Southern Cross, which for many years was Australia's top international event, and the Dunlop 2 GO. Not going to take fastest time, coming now at a 37.11, in fact down around the Allan Grice times.
Peter Clark is the first of the rally drivers to take to the hill, although you could hardly call George Fury, his partner, solely a racing driver. Clark, the current New South Wales champion, is in the car that Fury has already put up the hill in 1 minute 35.76 seconds. And away he goes with all the power that a rally driver can muster. Holds first a long time into that corner, up to second. "34-year-old Clark from Canberra. The only driver to crash in practice. He actually damaged the front left-hand side of another car being driven in this event, the Bartlett, last night, put him in a clean car. But amongst the competitors in this Rallysprint Championship, there's a feeling that this car he's in at the moment is not the quickest of the 4 Bluebirds that are being built by Howard Marsden at the Nissan headquarters in Victoria, and that in fact the crashed car, even after last night's rebuild, remains the fastest. Clark very sideways there, but maybe that is the way to get these near to standard Nissan Bluebird TRXs up the hill. Developing 120 horsepower, the standard car puts out 95. Most of that horsepower has been found by adding twin side draft Weber carburettors, 45mm. As Clark, New South Wales champion in 1982 and 1983, comes towards the crest and across the finish line in 1 minute 36.2 seconds, slower than George Fury.
Ian Hill's teamed with Colin Bond, a man who recovered from one of the few really nasty crashes in Australian rallying when his car hit a tree stump and he badly broke both legs. And he's away. Been going well in recent years in the Australian Rally Championship. Hill, 4th last year, has an ex-Ford Works team Escort BDA and drives it with great vigour. Teaming with a man who so far has fastest time, so that gives Hill some buffer to keep their team in front. Bond a 34.47. As Hill's clean there, but the car doesn't actually sprint out of the corner, but then again that's more the car, I think, than the line or anything that the driver did wrong. Oh, here he's in tight and really has been slow, trying to stay tight. It's steep in tight, and almost everybody's staying out wide. That has cost Hill as an individual and his teaming with Bond a lot of time, because there's $4,000 prize money for the best individual time and $1,000 for the best team time. So they have both aims to consider. $2,000 is second individual prize money and $1,000 the third. From Gosford, 35 years old, been rallying for 11 years. Passes Bond's time now, gets very sideways, straightens it and across the line at a 37.9. Actually, the worst time of all race and rally drivers so far. This was one of the spots wherein Hill got untidy. He lost a lot of time out of their hairpin and then got the car very sideways there. Probably that didn't cost him a great deal of time, but kept the driver busy.
One of the characters of the sport, Ed Mulligan, if you look closely, is wearing an Indian headdress over his safety helmet, the significance of which quite is lost to me at the moment, but it certainly shouldn't slow him down on the hill. Mulligan's away. His co-driver Jim Richards currently holds the fastest time at 1 minute 34.34, so Mulligan has to make this a good one. Mulligan is regarded as being the fastest driver never to win an Australian Rally Championship. And he's demonstrating at the moment with some very exuberant driving. Up to the hairpin, and this is where we should see Mulligan really show his style. Powers into the hairpin. Goes wide.
Yes.
The exhaust on these Nissan Bluebird TRXs have been raised to give the cars a little more ground clearance. Springs remain standard, but the shock absorbers have been beefed up, giving 30% extra in bump and 35% extra in rebound. Mulligan now on the last section of the course. Winding out in second gear, back to first, up to second again, and coming up to the finish is Ed Mulligan. Mulligan's time, 1 minute 36.31. Not a fast time, but it still gives him the aggregate lead in the championship ahead of Fury and Clark and Bond and Hill.
Dick Johnson sharing the drive with rally driver Greg Carr, one of the really fast men of Australian rallying. Went to England and a 10th in the Burma Rally, a World Championship event. Classed him as among the world's best at that stage when he was lead driver for Colin Bond in BDA Escort's 240 horsepower specialist rally vehicles. A Canberra civil servant, 32 years old. First came to notice in what became the Castrol Rally, called the Dalton Casco, back in 1975. Is one of the rally drivers who's very pumped up as he just briefly locks a left front wheel there. Very pumped up, not only to beat the other rally drivers, but to beat the race drivers. Oh, look, got it sliding beautifully as he comes into the corner. He ends up a touch tight, but lovely rally technique. Johnson had done third fastest among the race drivers. What can Carr do now among the rally drivers who've been shaded a little bit by some, let's say, of the dual purpose drivers, people like Colin Bond? Oh, again, he's got it flowing beautifully, and he comes across for a 34.9, which with Johnson's time will make them second fastest among the teams, and he second fastest among the rally drivers.
Geoff Portman has a lot of ground to make up. His co-driver, Allan Grice, has managed a best time only of 1 minute 37.69, which is the slowest up the hill so far for the racing drivers. Portman, 29-year-old Forestry Commission officer from Victoria, has won the Australian Rally Championship in 1981 and 1982 and thrilled crowds throughout Australia, just as he's doing at the moment, with a brilliant pursuit of Peter Brock in the Repco Round Australia trial in 1979, driving a privateer Nissan. Slides around the hairpin, tries to keep the wheel straight, which is all important for getting your power to the ground. Hunched over the wheel, as you can see, full control. Waved on by the crowd, all of whom love him now as he comes up to the finish line in a time of 1 minute 35.38 for Geoff Portman.
1 minute 35.4.
Geoff Ross Dunkerton, the West Australian current reigning Australian Rally Champion, away, 38 years old, from Narrogin in Western Australia. 5 times the Australian Rally Champion, but sharing 5th fastest time with his teammate Kevin Bartlett. Last but one among the race drivers, Bartlett. And Dunkerton's gone, surely. My goodness. How did the wild man hang on to that one? A man who says too many of his fellow competitors don't enjoy themselves. You have to have a go, as he clambers up the bank. And Dunkerton says, I'm here to enjoy myself and to entertain the crowd. And is he ever doing that? Imagine what he could do with those attitudes if he had the power to balance it that he's used to. Although he did last year win the Australian title, his 5th, with a Group A car. It wasn't a hot rally car like the 200-odd horsepower ones that have been dominant in Australian rallying for some years. Dunkerton will not be particularly fast here because he's been untidy on a few points, using a technique for a car with more than 100 horsepower than he has. But I wonder what he'll do down the hill, because don't forget that the winner is the fastest time of the drivers up and downhill, and the winning team is the fastest of the pair of drivers up and down, 4 times in all. As he goes across the line, I said he wouldn't be fast. How about a 33.98 yet to be confirmed? One of the accepted techniques of rally driving is to go in too fast and then sort out the problem. Watch a 5 times Australian champion doing just that. Ross Dunkerton, the man. Look at the wheel work. And then look at it now, feeding off. Notice he was ahead of the car, hung on to it, and the official time, 34.61. This is the situation at the halfway point in the Rallysprint Championship. All 6 race drivers and all 6 rally drivers having completed their uphill runs. The leading team, therefore, is Ed Mulligan, Jim Richards. Jim Richards helping the team along by doing fastest individual time, followed then by Greg Carr, Dick Johnson, Ross Dunkerton, Kevin Bartlett. And then the last 3 teams you can see there. In the individual times, they are led by Jim Richards, then Colin Bond, men with experience in both race and rally, then a brace of rally drivers, Dunkerton, Portman and Carr, with Dick Johnson, the only driver in the top 6 of individual times who hasn't had rallying experience.
If you enjoyed the Winter Olympics at Sarajevo, welcome now to the Australian National Rallysprint downhill as Ian Hill blasts off down 1.7 kilometres through the starting lights. And this is the first time that the cars will take 3rd gear. They're running the cars down in reverse order, so the slowest man up the hill gets to come down first. Ian Hill's uphill time was 1 minute 38.42 seconds, 5.1 seconds slower than Jim Richards' fastest time. The drivers have swapped cars between the run uphill and now, so they're in unfamiliar machinery. Not that there's that much difference between the 4 Nissan Bluebird TRXs which are being used today for this championship. Just like in skiing, the slope looks a lot more gentle to the camera's eye than it does in real life. These guys, to some degree, are charging down a precipice. Through the hairpin, a nice tight exit from the hairpin for 35-year-old Ian Hill from Gosford. Pounding the brakes on the way down. And you've got to remember that you've got to keep the brakes in reasonable order for your partner who'll be driving the car later in the afternoon. Final corner. And over the finish line at a time of 1 minute 34.18 for Ian Hill.
Geoff Portman and Allan Grice were the slowest team. Allan Grice, the 11th fastest driver, slowest but 1, and he's the next man to charge down the hill. There's their cumulative time, and he's away. A 37.69 up the hill for Grice. Now we saw Hill, the experienced rally driver, locking wheels at about 4 different places. My goodness, Grice appears to have a lot of speed on there. Let's see if he can avoid front wheel locking. Very tight there where the apex is very nearly over the edge of the road. Grice looking to flow the car down the hill very well at this stage. Now hard on the brakes. Tight through there but tidy. Grice, I'd say, being very economical at this stage. A very tippy-toe job on brakes there. Just a momentary brake lock, as did Hill, but got round well and really did skate to the outside. My goodness. The car understeered towards the edge there, and Grice was very close to disaster. But still travelling well. Looking to me like a fairly good time. close to the bank. Twitches the car, gets the tail going. You can see the amount of wheel work as across the finish, about a 33.52, quicker than Hill.
Lying third on cumulative time with a 3-minute 12.06 seconds, 2.5 seconds behind Jim Richards and Ed Mulligan, is Ross Dunkerton and Kevin Bartlett. Bartlett is in the motor car at the moment. He's third slowest, 37.45 on the way up the hill. And Bartlett is one man who is not lacking in courage when it comes to facing a downhill slope like this. Right over the edge of the road. Probably working on the principle that if your wheels aren't touching the ground, then they're not creating any drag. Back to first gear. Here the front suspension bottom out there, and even with the larger shock absorbers, the tougher shock absorbers that have been fitted to these cars, but the Nissans are doing an excellent job in such rough conditions. It's certainly a testament to the way these motor vehicles are built that they're able to stand up to the punishment that they're getting today. KB, big rev, Kevin, he gives it to it now. Off the throttle to get it back in line and over the finish line. A time of 1 minute 35.07 seconds.
This is the slower half of the lead team. Ed Mulligan, some 3 seconds slower than the fastest driver overall. Richards on the way up, gets away now, but they are 1.5 seconds in front of the Carr Fury team, the overall second fastest up the hill. So a lot depending on Mulligan. Team prize $1,000, individual prize $4,000. That's a cumulative of the up and down time for each driver. Ed Mulligan, who supplies a lot of rally drivers with through his business, but who was heavily involved with Rally Cross years ago when it was running at Catalina Park, Katoomba, and who recently is getting out of his... He had 2 Ford Escorts, a BDA 1800, which was a few years ago about the state of the art in rally driving. Then he had an RS 2000, and recently bought a Group A RX-7 Mazda. Nice around there. Good, brave stuff. And bang. Keep your foot into it though, Edward. I think the Nissan mechanics are going to have a little bit of rear mudguard damage to repair on these cars by the end of the day. A good time, about 33, and we'll wait for the official. 1:33.05, Ed Mulligan. So far, the fastest man down the hill. Ed Mulligan had really taken his bravery pills for the run down the hill and backed up Jim Richards' fastest time on the way up beautifully to put his team in a very strong position. Look at how the bank saved him here from losing the car completely.
Ed Mulligan's cumulative time up and down the mountain is 3 minutes 9.36 seconds. That makes him the fastest overall. Peter Clark was equal fastest with Mulligan up the mountain, 1 minute 36.31 seconds. 8th fastest, both of them. Tied with George team with George Fury, who was only the next fastest up the mountain on 1 minute 35.76. Clark's really got to put a rabbit out of the hat now. Up to third gear, the 34-year-old Canberra driver. Lock up on the front wheels, you can see. Then hard onto the brakes again, lock up through here. Drivers are a bit concerned about brake bias on these cars. In fact, they prefer just a little more bias on the rear than these vehicles have got. So it's the front that's locking up first, as you can see. Nice, tight, economical through the hairpin for Clark. Handfuls of opposite lock on. Stays away from the bank. And that's exactly what he did do. As he crosses the finish line, and we wait for the official time. (1:33.28) makes him the second fastest down the hill.
Twice Australian Rally champion George Fury is ready to do the final time for the Peter Clark-George Fury team. The second of the downhill runs. They were lying second at the end of the uphill runs. Fury, as a personal best, lying seventh. And away. Fury will be very keen to do better than he did in the uphill runs. A man with a great reputation in rallying and a lot of experience, and has converted very successfully to circuit racing. Did anybody go tighter over that apex than Fury? Hanging the wheel right out over daylight. The man who did the survey here went back to Nissan and told them that they needed to get a little bit more power out of the cars and to tauten the suspension just a touch, damp it a bit harder, locks the front but still gets in fairly close to the apex with the tail out. So it didn't work too badly there, Fury having a real go, and lovely there. When you're in tight you can get the power on early. The fastest downhill time has been Mulligan at 33.05. This is Fury trying to lift the team, which he's in, to better than second place in the team standings. And Fury has absolutely blasted the downhill run, set the time for everybody to chase, 31.86. George Fury showed that if you don't get in tightly on the apexes, you've got less room to play with on the outside. And have a look at that one.
Dick Johnson was sixth fastest up the hill with a time of 1 minute 35.66 seconds. Now his time for the run down. He and Greg Carr are holding second place overall in the title with 3 minutes 11.0 seconds cumulative, only 1.5 behind the leaders Jim Richards and Ed Mulligan. Johnson is the fastest of the drivers, not experienced in rally driving. Oh, very wide there from Johnson and taking quite a deal of time to get it back into condition, which is going to cost him a fair bit of time. The advice Jim Richards was giving last night was drive this hill like a racetrack, not like a rally course. You know what the obstacles are, use all the track. Time to beat 1 minute 31.86 seconds to George Fury. Nowhere near the Scandinavian flick that the rally drivers have been giving through that corner. Johnson's time will not be as quick. 1:32.45. He's still second fastest behind George Fury.
1 minute 32.45.
Now it's former Australian Rally champion Geoff Portman, the youngest man in the event, 29 years old, a forestry officer from Victoria, who was 4th fastest up the hill, 5th fastest at least, going down. But his team, due to Allan Grice's time, running last at the halfway mark. Portman, though, like Carr, very fired up for the rally drivers to better the race drivers, and of course to do a personal best, like Fury, very tight there. And again very tight. Fury is the cumulative time that he's trying to better to go into the lead individually, and he was already 0.3 of a second better than Fury on the run up the hill. Shared the same team, followed on Fury in the Nissan team, gets the tail out well and the power on. In fact, so much power that he came into the bank as he really failed to drift out at the exit. Wonderful shot of just how much wheel work a rally driver does. He's got that car really flowing. 31.86 the time he's trying to better by Fury to go into the individual best. Also, of course, he wants to lift his team to chase the $1,000 for that. He's done the best time, no question about it. It's a 30.3, so Portman goes into the lead among the individual drivers, although his team will still be a little way back.
And with that great run down the mountain, Geoff Portman takes the lead in the JPS Rallycross Championship with a cumulative time of 3 minutes, 5.78 seconds. Greg Carr, the Australian Rally champion, 1978. Now at the starting line to take over the lead, Carr must get down the hill with a best time of 1 minute 30.35 seconds. In other words, he can afford to be slightly slower than Portman and take over the lead. But there are another 3 drivers still to come. Almost over the edge with the back wheel there, and he's slowed mightily. That will not help him at all. Carr partnered with Dick Johnson. Johnson already down the hill with the best time of 1 minute 32.45 seconds. That's 2.1 seconds slower than Geoff Portman's best. Carr and Johnson, after the first run up the mountain, however, were second in the JPS Rallysprint Championship, 1.95 seconds behind Jim Richards and Ed Mulligan. 6 times winner of the Castrol International Rally, and these hills around Canberra, Greg Carr knows these roads better than anyone. Carr consistently the fastest man down the infamous mine shaft during those Castrol rallies. He's not afraid of going fast downhill, as he just proves. But his best time is only 1:33.86, which drops him way back in the field, perhaps 5th or 6th fastest only. And here's the point at which Greg Carr lost the JPS Rallysprint Championship, when he locked up the back wheel, sent it left hand going into the left hand corner for a big Scandinavian flip, and put the back wheel right over the edge.
Ross Dunkerton and Kevin Bartlett were third fastest as a team pairing up the hill. Dunkerton was also third fastest driver, and on his way down now, and has to better 31.17 to be the fastest individual up and down the hill. That's to beat Geoff Portman. Roscoe, as he's known, the man from Narrogin, Western Australia, 5 times Australian rally champion. Relaxes as enthusiastically as he undertakes his motorsport. Perhaps one of Dunkerton's greatest successes, greatest perseverances, was his 4th place in the Repco trial between the 3 all-conquering Holden dealer team cars. He was brilliant up the hill, and he should be down. He kept the Volvo going in that particular event against all odds, changing dampers time and time again throughout the event, and did a great job. And here is tidy, quick, flowing. Look at the wheel work there. Oh, and he's beautifully committed there. He had the car flowing beautifully. 31.17, the time he has to better, doesn't matter. He was out wide, but he didn't lift his foot. Snaps a change there. Look at it, all crossed up. Under brakes, but he is flying. And that has hammered the time to pieces. He's down around 1:29, so is into the individual lead without any shadow of a doubt. 1:29.12, the new leader individually, chasing $4,000 in the JPS Australian National Rallysprint Championship. Dunkerton was the most exuberant on the run up the hill. On the way down, a little bit more contained, but did he ever have the car fast and flowing? Got his apexes right, got into the power early. Beautiful commitment round the blind bends, tail out, but very tidy as he exited, except at one spot there where the bank straightened him.
Only 2 drivers remain now, Colin Bond and Jim Richards, the fastest men on the mountain. To beat Ross Dunkerton's time, Colin Bond must get down the mountain in 1 minute 29.26 seconds. Bond's best time up was 1 minute 34.47. That was 1.1 seconds slower than Jim Richards. So neat over that obstacle, which has brought so many other people undone. Beautiful, Colin. Smoothness is the name of the game. Bond's in the car that is alleged by the cognoscenti to be the fastest of all the Bluebirds. That's the one with the small dent on the left-hand front guard.
Colin Bond, I should say, cutting on the handbrake. Trying to hit the rear of the car.
Just lifting the front inside wheel. Scandinavian fleet, hold the power on. Bond going for it. Lost absolutely no time out of that corner. Last corner on the hill now. Just over the apex. Through the traps. Colin Bond in the 29s. 1:2.924. Colin Bond is second fastest, but only just. And I'm wrong. Colin Bond, with 1 minute 29.24 seconds, has taken over the lead in the JPS Rally Sprint with a cumulative time of 3 minutes, 3.71 seconds, 0.02 of a second, 200th of a second faster than Ross Dunkerton.
The last driver to run is the fastest man up the hill. That's Jim Richards. He's ready to go. He is away now, presently leading the rally sprint, but has to do a time 0.11 of a second, 1.1 seconds slower than Colin Bond's downhill time to take the individual lead, a 30.37. Jim Richards. Wouldn't he love this as a comeback to the disappointment of the James Hardy last year, where dirty fuel put him out of the event virtually on the first lap after qualifying beautifully, but did have the advantage of a second run up, pruned more than a second off his time up because of a timing failure. No such advantage here. Then, because of the good time up, a second in hand. I don't think there's enough flair. There isn't. He's not fast enough out of air. He's tidy, but he just isn't fiery enough, I think, to beat Bond. And the superb drive by Dunkerton, and that was followed by Fury. Among the teams, it's Bartlett Dunkerton leading them at the moment. And then that was bettered by Bond Hill by less than 0.2 of a second. As Richards goes across too slowly, out into the 31s, so the winner of the individual section of the JPS Australian National Championship Rally Sprint will undoubtedly be Colin Bond. So by just 0.05 of a second, former Australian Rally Champion, Touring Car Champion and James Hardy 500 winner at Bathurst, Colin Bond wins the inaugural JPS Australian National Rally Sprint Championship from 5 times Australian Rally Champion Ross Dunkerton. Jim Richards, also with rally experience, did very well to come third, and then continuing rally domination. Geoff Portman, George Fury, the first of the people with virtually no dirt track experience at all. Race driver Dick Johnson really excelled himself to come in 6th, and in fact ahead of his rally driver teammate Greg Carr, their 7th. Again, rally drivers, and the other 2 race drivers really with no dirt track experience, Allan Grice and Kevin Bartlett. And now down to John Smailes with the winner.
In this inaugural JPS Rally Sprint Championship, I think everyone's been a winner. The concept has proven successful, but the outright winner of the event is Colin Bond by just 0.05 of a second from Ross Dunkerton. Colin, congratulations.
Well, thanks very much, John. All I can say, it was a lot of hard work in the car, and you know, thanks to Howard Marsden, I think, and the boys for supplying the cars, because you know, going up the hill, we thought they may have been a little bit slow because the hill is quite steep, but they were certainly a handful coming down, I can assure you.
Colin, you were second fastest both up the hill and down the hill, but you couldn't really say that consistency counted today.
No, I think basically what you had to do was put a very good run together both up and down the hill and not make many mistakes, because you know, I think making the mistakes, you lost the event, you actually didn't win the event.
There's a big trophy coming your way right now, Colin, from Keith Thornton.
Congratulations, Colin.
Good, thanks very much, Keith.
And a small cheque.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, Colin, that's $4,000 in fact, which is not too small.
No, it's quite not a bad weekend's work actually, and that's what we thought we might do this weekend, come down here and go back with a bit of money, but it was certainly hard work, and the pressure was really put on, particularly by Jim in the first run and Duncan in the second run, who left just prior to me, and when I heard his run, I knew that virtually we had to give it a go down the hill and all stops out and maybe make it to the bottom, and we did, and we were the winners, and that's the main thing.
Ross Dunkerton was second by just 0.05 of a second. Ross, it must be disappointing in one way.
John, it is, but to be beaten by Colin Bond is a privilege. He is probably Australia's best all-round motorsportman, and it was good to compete against all the top drivers in Australia today, and to be beaten by Colin Bond is a privilege.
That big Scandinavian flick of yours on the way down on the last section.
Well, yes, I don't know whether it was a Scandinavian flick or whether it was just a bit of nerves, but I took Greg Carr for a drive yesterday, and he said I was doing it all wrong, and because he said he wouldn't navigate for me, so I don't know. We'll see.
The man who looked like he had it all together after the uphill section this morning was Jim Richards. Jim, congratulations on your 3rd place this afternoon, but what went wrong?
Well, I think I didn't try quite hard enough coming down. I took it too easy, and that's what brought me undone.
Chasing the $1,000 team prize and winning it was Ed Mulligan, Jim Richards, individually 8th and 3rd, with 6:14 their cumulative time from 4 runs, 2 1/4 seconds faster than Ian Hill and Colin Bond. Ross Dunkerton, Bartlett 3rd, they were just 9/100ths further back. In fact, there was not much time between all of the teams as we look down there with a spread of only 3.5 seconds to 6th place Geoff Portman and Allan Grice. But all of the teams notable by the fact that they had one driver doing well, one fair way back.
The winners of the team prize today were again Jim Richards, who came 3rd outright, with his partner Ed Mulligan. Gentlemen, congratulations on that event. Ed, you're a little slower than the racing drivers.
We were just out there for the fun. I think putting the hand out the window and belting the side of the car to get it to go quicker didn't really help my time up the hill.
This could be the start of something big. Nissan and JPS have real plans for Rallysprint in Australia in the future. They include bitumen sections, they include bringing in drivers from all sections of motorsport, including Speedway. So if you thought this was good, stick about for the future. On behalf of Will Hagon, this is John Smailes for ABC Sport in the hills of Canberra.